Steelbound. The steering wheel felt cold beneath my fingers as I gripped it, my knuckles white with tension. It wasn't attached to anything, just one of hundreds hanging from rusted chains throughout the abandoned factory. I'd come looking for ghosts. Instead, I found something far worse. But I should start at the beginning. My name is Christian, 28 years old, competitive powerlifter, and as of 3 months ago, amateur paranormal investigator with a YouTube channel that was finally gaining traction. Lift the Veil, I called it, a play on both my weightlifting background and my newfound mission to expose supernatural phenomena. Tonight's location, the Steelcraft manufacturing plant, an abandoned steering wheel factory that had been rotting on the outskirts of town for nearly 2 decades. "I don't think this is a good idea," Daniel said, adjusting his camera equipment in the passenger seat of my truck. We were parked about 50 yards from the factory entrance, the massive concrete structure looming against the night sky like some ancient monument. The shattered windows resembled hollow eye sockets, staring down at us with empty malice. "You always say that," I replied, checking my flashlight batteries. "And we always get great footage." Daniel shook his head. "This place is different. My cousin works at the police station. He says they've had reports of suspicious activity here, not ghosts, people." I laughed. "Drug addicts, probably. They'll scatter as soon as they see us." "I'm serious, Christian. This doesn't feel right." I clapped him on the shoulder. 2 hours. We go in, capture some EVPs, maybe find some cool old machinery, and we're out. The comments section is already hyped for this one. Daniel sighed, then glanced at his phone. "Shit. My mum's calling. She's having problems with her insulin again." He hesitated. "I should go check on her." "Now? We're already here." "I'm sorry. Family emergency." He avoided my eyes. "We can reschedule." I knew Daniel well enough to recognize when he was using his mother as an excuse. He was genuinely spooked. "Fine. I'll do a quick solo reconnaissance. Just some establishing shots for next time." "You shouldn't go alone." 2 hours, I repeated, stepping out of the truck. "I've got my phone. If I'm not back by midnight, call the Ghostbusters." Daniel didn't laugh. "Be careful," he said, sliding over to the driver's seat. "Text me when you're heading back." I watched him drive away, headlights cutting through the darkness until they disappeared around a bend. Part of me was annoyed at being abandoned, but another part felt a surge of excitement. Solo investigations had a different energy, more intimate, more intense. I turned toward the factory. A chain-link fence surrounded the property, but years of neglect had left multiple entry points. I found a section where the metal had been peeled back, like the lid of a tin can, and squeezed through. My camera and equipment bag clutched to my chest. The crunch of gravel beneath my boots seemed unnaturally loud as I approached the main entrance. A massive loading dock gaped open, a cavernous mouth inviting me inside. The beam of my flashlight barely penetrated the darkness beyond. "Let's lift the veil," I whispered to myself, switching on my camera and stepping inside. The interior of Steelcraft was a cathedral of industrial decay. My light swept across an expansive production floor, where assembly lines sat frozen in time. Steering wheels in various stages of completion hung from overhead conveyors, suspended by rusted chains like strange industrial fruit. The air smelled of metal and mildew, with an underlying chemical tang I couldn't identify. "This is Christian Rivera, Lift the Veil, coming to you from the abandoned Steelcraft manufacturing plant," I narrated quietly for my camera. Built in 1967, this factory produced steering wheels for major American automakers until it closed in 2005. Local legends say that a foreman was crushed to death in the hydraulic press, and his spirit still oversees the night shift. I moved deeper into the facility, panning my camera across the machinery. Workers have reported hearing the sounds of the assembly line running at night and seeing a figure watching from the catwalks above. For the next hour, I methodically explored the main floor, documenting the eerie stillness and recording EVP sessions that yielded nothing but the settling of ancient metal and the distant drip of water. Despite Daniel's warnings, the place seemed completely deserted, not even evidence of squatters or drug use, until I reached the administrative section. The offices were in better condition than the factory floor, with papers still scattered across desks as if the employees had left in a hurry. As I turned down a hallway toward what appeared to be the manager's office, my light caught a flash of something recent. A cigarette butt on the floor, the filter still white. I knelt to examine it. Fresh. Maybe a day old at most. A sound from deeper in the building made me freeze, the unmistakable metallic click of a door closing. "Hello?" I called out, immediately regretting it. "Security?" "I'm just filming a documentary." Silence answered, but it felt charged somehow, as if the darkness itself was listening. I turned my camera toward the sound's direction, suddenly wishing Daniel had stayed. "Probably just the wind," I said for the benefit of my future viewers, but my voice lacked conviction. I continued toward the manager's office, my senses hyper-alert. The door was ajar, and as I pushed it open, my light revealed a space that didn't match the abandonment of the rest of the building. The desk was clear of dust, and a modern laptop sat open on its surface. "What the?" Something heavy struck the back of my head. The world tilted, my camera clattering to the floor as darkness swarmed my vision. I awoke to the sound of voices. My head throbbed viciously, and when I tried to move, I discovered my wrists and ankles were bound to a metal chair. I was in some kind of basement room, illuminated by a single bare bulb that swung gently overhead, creating shifting shadows across concrete walls. The air was thick with the chemical smell I'd noticed earlier, but stronger, more acrid. "He's awake," said a voice with a slight accent I couldn't place. A figure stepped into the light. He was tall and lean, dressed in expensive-looking clothes that seemed out of place in the decrepit surroundings. Dark eyes studied me with clinical detachment. "Who are you supposed to be?" he asked. My mouth was dry as sandpaper. "Christian Rivera. I'm a paranormal investigator. I make YouTube videos." The man's lips curved in a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "A ghost hunter. In my factory." "Your factory?" I tested my restraints. The zip ties bit into my wrists. "This place has been abandoned for years." "Not abandoned. Repurposed." He gestured around. "I am Romario. This is my business location." Understanding dawned slowly through the fog of my concussion. The chemical smell, the secluded location, the fresh signs of occupation. "Look," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I didn't know anyone was using this place. I'm just here for my channel. No cops, no trouble." Romario circled my chair slowly. "Your channel. How many followers do you have?" "About 50,000. Small audience." 50,000 potential witnesses. He stopped behind me, his voice closer to my ear. "That is a problem. I'll delete the footage, all of it. No one will ever know I was here." "Yes," Romario agreed. "No one will know." The door to the room opened, and two men dragged in a third figure, whose head was covered with a black bag. They forced the person into a chair opposite me and secured him with similar restraints. Romario nodded, and one of his men removed the bag. Daniel stared back at me, his left eye swollen shut, blood trailing from his nose. "Daniel?" My voice cracked. "What? I thought you left." "He did leave," Romario said. "But then he came back. We found him filming the exterior of my factory. Very suspicious behavior." "I was worried about you," Daniel wheezed. "You weren't answering texts." "Your friend is very loyal," Romario observed. "A quality I admire. Unfortunately, loyalty to the wrong person can be problematic." My mind raced frantically. "We won't say anything to anyone. Just let us go, and you'll never see us again." Romario seemed to consider this, tapping his finger thoughtfully against his chin. "You know, Christian, in my line of work, trust is everything. My customers trust me to provide a quality product. My associates trust me to protect our operation. How can I trust that you and your friend will remain silent? I swear, words are just air." He snapped his fingers, and one of his men handed him a small case. "I need something more tangible." From the case, Romario withdrew a syringe filled with cloudy liquid. "This is my newest product. Very pure, very potent, not yet ready for market." Daniel began to sob quietly. "Please," I said, "we're not a threat to you." "Everyone is a potential threat." Romario approached Daniel, "until they prove otherwise." What happened next plays in my mind on an endless loop. The needle entering Daniel's arm, his screams as the drug took effect, the way his body convulsed against the restraints, foam gathering at the corners of his mouth, eyes rolling back in his head. Romario watching with the clinical interest of a scientist observing a lab rat, occasionally making notes on his phone. After what seemed like hours, Daniel went still, his breathing shallow and irregular. "Fascinating," Romario murmured. "The compound needs refinement. Too much cardiac stress." He turned to me. "Your turn." "Wait," I gasped. "I can help you." Romario raised an eyebrow. "Help me?" "My channel, my followers. I could advertise for you, subtly. Product placement." The words tumbled out in desperate improvisation. "I have influence. People trust me." For the first time, genuine amusement flickered across Romario's face. "A social media influencer for my business. Why not? You said you're developing new products. You need test markets, consumer feedback." Romario studied me, head tilted slightly. "You are afraid to die, but not too afraid to think. This is unusual." He returned the syringe to its case with a snap. "Perhaps there is a better use for you." He nodded to his men. "Take him to room 3. I will decide in the morning." They cut the ties on my ankles, but left my wrists bound. As they dragged me toward the door, I looked back at Daniel, slumped in his chair. "What about my friend?" Romario waved dismissively. "He has served his purpose. The test was informative. You can't just leave him like that. He needs a hospital. By morning, he will need a mortician." Romario's cold eyes met mine. "Remember that when you consider your own usefulness." Room 3 turned out to be a storage closet. They threw me inside and secured the door with a padlock. My wrists remained bound behind my back, but otherwise, I was unrestrained. The space was narrow, maybe 6 feet by 8, with metal shelving along one wall, holding cleaning supplies and spare parts for machinery. No windows, no other exit. The only light came from a crack beneath the door, casting the room in ghostly blue from the hallway fluorescence. I'm not sure how long I sat there, listening to occasional footsteps passing by, trying to process what had happened. Daniel was dying or already dead because of me, because I'd insisted on exploring this place despite his warnings, because my stupid ghost hunting channel was more important than his instincts. Eventually, I pulled myself together enough to explore my prison. Using my shoulder, I pushed against the shelves, testing their stability. They were bolted to the wall, but one of the metal brackets was loose. With some awkward maneuvering, I managed to position my bound wrists against the bracket's edge, the sharp metal bit into the plastic zip tie, and I began soaring back and forth. It took what felt like hours, the plastic gradually weakening as I worked it against the metal. My wrists were raw and bleeding by the time the tie finally snapped. Freedom brought new clarity. I had to escape, had to get help for Daniel if it wasn't already too late. The door was my only option, but the padlock would be impossible to break without tools. The shelving unit gave me an idea. I examined the cleaning supplies, finding a bottle of industrial drain cleaner. The label warned it contained concentrated sulfuric acid. Carefully, I unscrewed the cap and poured a small amount onto the padlock hasp, then retreated to the far corner to wait. The acid worked slowly, the metal gradually bubbling and blackening. I applied more every few minutes, careful not to spill any on myself. After what must have been at least an hour, the hasp had corroded enough that I thought I might be able to break it. I searched the shelves again and found a heavy wrench. Wrapping my hand in a rag to muffle the sound, I struck the weakened hasp. Once, twice. On the third hit, it broke apart. I pressed my ear to the door. Silence. Holding my breath, I eased the door open and peered into the hallway. Empty. The basement corridor stretched in both directions, lined with similar doors. Some were marked with numbers. I had to find Daniel. Moving as quietly as possible, I began trying doors. Most were locked. One contained boxes of packaging materials. Another held nothing but empty glass vials. The third door I tried opened to a nightmare. Daniel was there, but not as I'd last seen him. His body had been arranged in a grotesque tableau, limbs contorted into impossible angles, wrists and ankles still bound to the chair, which had been tipped onto its side. His mouth was frozen in a silent scream, eyes wide and unseeing. On the concrete floor beside him, written in what could only be his blood, was a message: "Remember your usefulness." I stumbled backward, bile rising in my throat. Grief and horror warred with the urgent need to escape before Romario or his men discovered I was free. The hallway led to a stairwell. I climbed it silently, emerging into what appeared to be the factory cafeteria. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, providing just enough illumination to navigate by. I could see the main production floor beyond a set of double doors. As I crossed the cafeteria, a steering wheel rolled across my path, the metal ring glinting in the moonlight. I hadn't touched anything that could have disturbed it. When I looked up, I saw dozens of them hanging from chains on the ceiling, swaying gently as if stirred by an unfelt breeze. A voice called out from somewhere in the factory. Then another responded. Romario's men were still here, still awake. I ducked behind a fallen vending machine as footsteps approached the cafeteria. Through a crack, I could see one of the men enter, sweeping a flashlight across the room. He paused, the beam illuminating the steering wheel on the floor. "Hello?" he called. "Is someone there?" I held my breath, pressing myself against the wall. The guard advanced slowly, his light moving methodically across the space. He was almost upon my hiding place when a loud crash echoed from the main floor. The guard froze, then turned and hurried toward the sound. I allowed myself to breathe again, waiting until his footsteps faded before emerging from my concealment. The factory's main entrance was too exposed. I needed another way out. Moving through shadows, I made my way toward what I hoped was the rear of the building. I found myself in a narrow corridor that appeared to be an employee exit. Freedom tantalized me. Just a doorway away, until I heard his voice. "Leaving so soon, Christian?" Without saying goodbye. Romario stood at the end of the corridor, hands clasped behind his back. He wore the same clinical expression he had while watching Daniel die. "Your resourcefulness continues to impress me," he said. "Most people would still be weeping in that closet." "You killed Daniel," I said, my voice raw. "I tested a product," he corrected. "His death was a side effect, not the objective." I glanced at the exit door, calculating my chances. Romario was between me and freedom, but he was alone, at least for the moment. "You're wondering if you can overpower me," he observed. "You're physically stronger, certainly, but are you faster, smarter, more willing to do what is necessary?" He withdrew a handgun from behind his back, pointing it casually in my direction. "I think not." Something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the image of Daniel's broken body etched into my mind, or the realization that Romario intended to kill me regardless of what I did. I lunged forward, ducking low as the gun discharged, the bullet whizzing over my head. My shoulder connected with his midsection. We crashed into the wall, the impact knocking the gun from his hand. Romario was surprisingly strong, his elbow connecting with my temple, sending stars across my vision. I drove my fist into his kidney, feeling something crack beneath my knuckles. He gasped, momentarily stunned. I pressed my advantage, grabbing him by the throat and smashing his head against the concrete wall. Once, twice. His eyes rolled back, body going limp. I released him, watching him crumple to the floor. Blood pooled beneath his head, but his chest still rose and fell with shallow breaths. He wasn't dead, just unconscious. The gun lay a few feet away. I stared at it, my hand halfway extended. It would be easy. Simple justice for Daniel. One pull of the trigger, and the man who had tortured and killed my friend would never hurt anyone again. But I couldn't do it. Instead, I turned and pushed through the exit door, emerging into the cold night air. I called 911 from a gas station a mile down the road. The police arrived quickly, followed by DEA agents who had apparently been building a case against Romario for months. They found him still unconscious where I'd left him, along with evidence of his drug operation and Daniel's body. The investigation lasted weeks. I told my story countless times to different officers and agents, each recounting bringing back the horror of that night. They found my camera in Romario's office, the footage intact up to the moment I was attacked. Daniel's death wasn't captured, small mercy in an ocean of trauma. Romario survived his injuries. He was charged with first-degree murder, drug trafficking, kidnapping, and a dozen other crimes. His operation was dismantled, his associates arrested. Justice, of a sort, though nothing could bring Daniel back. I shut down my channel, deleted all the videos. Some things aren't worth the views. Today, 3 months later, I'm packing the last of my belongings into my truck. I can't stay in this town anymore. Too many memories, too many nightmares. I've accepted a job offer in Colorado, personal trainer at a small gym. No cameras, no investigations, just helping people get stronger. As I place the final box in the truck bed, something catches my eye in the side mirror. A reflection. A familiar figure standing behind me, watching with clinical detachment. I spin around, heart hammering, but there's no one there. The parking lot is empty, save for my truck and a few resident vehicles. I take a deep breath, rubbing my eyes. Just stress and trauma playing tricks on my mind. Romario is in custody awaiting trial. He can't hurt anyone anymore. I climb into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirror. The steering wheel feels cold beneath my fingers as I grip it, my knuckles white with tension. As I pull out of the parking lot, I notice a black sedan waiting at the corner. It follows as I turn onto the main road, maintaining a careful distance. I tell myself it's nothing, just another car heading in the same direction, just coincidence. But as I glance in the rearview mirror, I catch a glimpse of the driver. Romario smiles at me, and the sedan accelerates. Hey there, horror fans! If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. And remember, if a friend tries to warn you about suspicious activity in an abandoned factory, maybe listen to them instead of saying 2 hours will be fine. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a situation where the only steering you're doing is directly into trouble. Click that notification bell, or Romario might just follow you home next.